Cool. Okay. Why don't we start? Let's just start. Let's start.
Okay.
Let's start.
You sure?
Yeah, let's start. It's good. We can let people in, walk slowly. I'll take my time. Hi everyone. Thank you so much here on Zoom, but also on our Facebook. We have a really great chat with Spyder today. And before we start, I do want to acknowledge that Vogue Jam is on the unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people, an unceded territory of stolen land that we continue to navigate, and we take a privilege of continuing to work on here and find more ways to find resolution with the Indigenous people here. I also want to make a cultural acknowledgement to what Vogue Jam's mandate is all about when it comes to sharing and educating ballroom culture and its history, coming from queer, Latinx, Black, and trans folk from Harlem in New York. And opportunities like this, which I'm really excited about, are a really great chance for us for everyone else here in Vogue Jam to learn more about ballroom, not just from like learning how to Vogue or a category like face or like learning how to walk, but coming from the people who are actually who are in it, who are still in it, who still make the moves, who have made the statements, who made all the things. So yeah, I'll let Spyder introduce himself before we start.
Hello. My name is Spyder. I am a legendary for Old Way, and I have been a part of 3 different scenes, the WBT scene, mainstream scene, and Kiki scene. And I am going to talk about a lot of stuff, including my journey and how I started and a little bit about the WBT scene. So I'm really excited to be here and speak with you guys and share with you guys.
Yay, we're so excited to have you, Spyder. Just for context, everyone, I heard Spyder talk at Pack Rat's talk. I think that was in like early August, end of July. July, yeah. And I just really was interested to hear more about the WBT scene that they'll talk about today. Yeah, and just I felt like this kindred energy. I'm like, I think we could like jive. So I feel like I want to reach out to them, be like, let's do this. Let's get you out into the Vancouver, see the Pacific Northwest, get the girls to know about who you are and what you do, and more about the scene. So I guess my first question to just start off, I guess, yeah, who are you in your life and who are you in ballroom? And where do they intersect or don't? But I think it's really a part of ballroom, but especially for people in ballroom that we don't always hear a lot about is like the other part of their life. So if you'd like to share.
Absolutely. So who I am in my regular life is Aisha, and who I am in ballroom and entertainment is Spyder. In ballroom, you know, I'm literally, I would say, the epitome of a leader, and not somebody who happens to be an egotistical leader or anything of that nature. I'm always open to learning and, you know, just helping, advising, and just being what I can to the community and bringing what I can to the community as a young woman of color who happens to be pushing the envelope in several different ways. You know, not being a size 0 girl, and who, you know, absolutely, did the sound just disappear or something? Oh, okay. You know, being somebody who can be an example to all types of people who are out there, you know, just living my truth, walking in my truth, and just continuing to achieve in my regular life. I am definitely an artist in all aspects of the word. I'm a photographer, videographer. I do production work. I dance other styles besides Vogue. House music is where I started. And for those who are not familiar with house music, I need y'all to get into it and really feel it, because house is a feeling, honey. It is a spiritual thing. It is a love thing. And if you don't know, that's okay. I need you to look up some house music and get into her. Okay, and let her get into you. Okay.
And if you in band Vogue Jam and don't understand house still, we got an issue. We're gonna figure it out. So.
No, but you know what? It's not an issue because everybody's not a house head. You know, some people are just like, you know, they get into it, and there's a difference between house music and Vogue beats, even though they intersect. So I definitely started there. I pop, I lock. You know, I do have a background in hip hop, but house is my heart. And it's through house music that I kind of discovered Vogue music and the Vogue scene, because like I said, each scene kind of, you know, intersects with one another. But Aisha is the woman, you know, very much about her business, very much about fighting for who, you know, I am, and, you know, the things that I want to do, traveling. And there are times where they do intersect, you know, Aisha and Spyder, and so on and so forth. You know, there are certain times where, you know, Spyder's in my back pocket and Aisha's got to handle business and be present. And then Spyder is always present. Right.
It'd be like that. It'd be like that sometimes.
You know?
I would love to ask you also, where did the name Spyder come from? How
I got the name. So that's a very interesting story. I happened to be in practice with Benny Ninja one day, and I was battling against somebody in the house. And before that, once I was made at the time a ninja, I told Benny, I said, I don't want to be known as Aisha Ninja because that's whack. And for me, as a person who's a battle kid, you know, I kind of equated stepping into a battle as in stepping into a character. So Aisha is Aisha. I didn't want to step in, you know, you can't step into Aisha because Aisha is here, period, right? So I told him, I said, you know, back in the day, they used to name the folks in the house and not just, you know, such and such, you know, whatever, right? So I used to bug him every practice. And this particular practice, I was battling against somebody. And in regards to hip hop, if you're familiar with breaking, there's a 6-step. I can't get past 4.5, okay? No shade. My leg, listen, you got to do with what you get. You got to do what you can do with what you have. And that's just what it is. And I got baby legs, and it's all right, okay? Because I do my thing with my little baby legs. And that 4.5 little swing around, it just ain't working. So I got a little 4.5 step. So I say all that to say, because I was battling this guy and he was pulling stuff out his butt. And I'm like, okay, the adrenaline took over and I slid on my head towards him. Don't ask me how I did it because I couldn't tell you. I'm bottom heavy. So that was all turned upside down. And I slid across the floor towards him in this battle. And by the end of that, he was like, all right, I give up. I'm done. So Benny was like, ooh, I know what I'm going to name you. And I said, okay, what's that? He goes, Spyder. I'm going to name you Spyder. And I'm like, okay, that's cute. You know, that's different. And one of the guys that was in the house, he had on a Spyder jacket. So he was like, and I'm not going to spell it Spyder. He was like, I'm going to spell it Spyder. And I was like, ooh, I like that. We could do that. So I've been Spyder ever since. And I asked him, I said, well, but why Spyder? He said, it's because of the way you battle. He was like, you lure people into your web and then you just take their head off. And I said,
ooh,
right. And okay. that's literally how I do it. So not on purpose. It's just part of, you know, what happens and in that moment. But yeah, I've been Spyder ever since.
That's so fab. I feel like, I mean, I came from street dance first, like my first. I was also breaker too. I started dancing and like
all style battles are everything.
Yo, and that's a whole nother story. Talking about all style battles.
Right.
That's a whole story.
Book me again, honey. We could have that conversation. We'll do another one, honey. We're trying to make this rent money this thing.
Yeah, I feel you.
Okay.
But I feel like there is something that comes from breaking that extends so accessibly to ballroom, like and like
right.
specifically Vogue as well. Like, there's so many connecting points. You have similar to an MC and hip hop and breakdancing. You have like your commentator. You have your DJ. You have like your DJ in Ballroom. You have your So there's all these things that are so. It's like the 1-2. It's not that hard to get from point A to point B, and also I mean just knowing that your old way makes so much sense now that you have a breaking background, because like the roots of old way, a lot of it has inspiration from breaking, from popping, as well, right? Which I think, yeah, that makes so much sense. And
well,
I
I
love
mean,
the
there's within old way, there's so many different elements. Like, you know, you have the kung fu, you know, back in the day, throwback kung fu element. You have the posing for modeling element. You know, with the music itself, you know, I always like to say that musicality is one of the unknown or unnamed elements in Vogue. You know, you have your 5 elements. I always count character and musicality in addition to that. So just being able to tell a story, but in the music, drawing people into it, for me, has always been part of my style. So yeah, there's so many different things that you can kind of put into it. You know, because even with breaking, it's more fluid. It's not as militant as old way, right? But every style you can always incorporate into what you're doing. You know what I mean? Especially more so when you're thinking open to all and so on and so forth. But yeah.
Cool. I feel we can. We have so many connecting points, and we could go on forever. But that's another day.
I'm trying to tell you, book me again. You don't say book me again.
It's good, you know. It's good. It's very possible. So I mean, we brought you here today. I mean, I brought you here today to talk about the WBT scene. So, would you be down to give us a rundown of what is WBT? What does it mean? When did it start? What was your part in it? And what is its history now or its past history?
So the WBT scene stands for Women's, Butch, and Trans scene. It was referred to a lot as the women's scene. It started around about 2006, around that time. And basically what it was a space for us to be able to kind of express ourselves and have categories and be included. You know, there were a lot of folks who felt like we weren't being really included like that in the mainstream. So a lot of women who are now your icons and your Hall of Famers and, you know, and so on and so forth, you know, kind of came together and created a scene so that we could be counted, you know. Even now in mainstream, you don't see a whole lot of women specific categories, or there are no Butch categories at all, Butch women categories. And, you know, the trans men, literally, it's almost like they just have realness and that's kind of like it. But there was so many different categories in that scene. And it was an amazing time for us. You know, me just kind of coming into Ballroom, I was able to kind of walk and get my feet wet, so to speak, and just kind of just see more representation of myself, if that makes sense. I, at the time, you know, there were other, you know, different houses and stuff like that, just like there is in the mainstream, and just like you would see in your Kiki scene now. But I came in as a ninja that stayed a ninja. There was not a ninja WBT house or anything like that, but I just stayed ninja throughout, you know, because I didn't know that there were other houses. And when I did find out there were other houses, I felt like I was cheating if I went to another house. So I was just like, no, I'm gonna just stay ninja.
Then you would have had like 3 houses maybe. If you were Kiki mainstream then WBT, you would have had like 3 different houses possibly.
Yeah, technically. You know, the WBT scene existed before the Kiki scene, I believe. So just as big as the Kiki scene is now, you know, it was kind of like that for the WBT scene. So I walked old way. and like open to all Vogue categories in that scene. I was going to walk, we were talking about this earlier, there's a category that we used to call switch, where you would come out as an AG or aggressive, and then you would kind of like, you know, present yourself with whatever the category was calling for. And then you would go back and switch into like a feminine kind of look based on whatever the category was looking, you know, or calling for. And I used to always admire that category because I myself consider myself androgynous. So that was just something I did anyway, you know, just in my daily life. So I was like, yeah, I could definitely freak that, but I wanted to be taken seriously as a Voguer. So I never walked that category, but it was something that I always kind of wanted to do. They had, you know, your sneaker categories, and they had face, and, you know, there was so many different categories. And what was very interesting as well about that scene is that you had a lot of people coming from mainstream to sit on the judges panels or to be a part of the functions or just to come and see what, you know, what was happening. So even though it was a separate scene, it was still getting, you know, the love and attention from the mainstream, which was really dope, you know. I remember one time I was walking a ball and it was women's performance. Now, I didn't really kind of like walk that category, but it wasn't like they had a specific old way category. There wasn't a lot of women who were doing, you know, old way, so to speak. So I walked women's performance and I walked old way as women's performance, which is like, you don't really see that too often. And we were supposed to have Jack, Mizrahi Gucci, as the commentator. So I came out prepared for Jack. What I got was Selvin, AKA Kool-Aid, and I gagged. So if anybody, you know, doesn't know who Selvin is, I need y'all to really brush up and did not play, okay? If you came out there looking crazy or what sloppy, you would hear about it, you would get embarrassed. So I'm in the middle of voguing, and I was doing old way, and they called for a cat burglar. And I had made up in my mind I was not putting on nobody's cat suit because I have a lot of body, honey. And I love my body, but my body is not going to be all over the floor, okay? And then I'm suffocating in this damn spandex, and you trying to kill me, and all I want is a trophy. No. So I made up in my mind I was not wearing a cat suit. So I put on all black coveralls, which is like the one piece suit, but it's, you know, sort of baggy. And I had Nike Air Rifts. So my feet looked like Ninja Turtles, you know, like little ninja shoes, right? And I had on like a ninja, like, you know, mask covering my face. And what I was looking for, like this kind of bag that I could put like jewelry in to kind of make my grand entrance. I couldn't find one, so I used a plastic bag. And one of my friends was in the back, and she had like walked body, and she had a long string of pearls. And I was like, "Ooh, let me get your pearls real quick," because I couldn't find any in time before the category. So she let me use her pearls, and I put it in my pocket. So I came out voguing. I ended up dipping on like both of my legs, and then came back up, and, you know, whatever, got my tens. So nobody ended up walking. And here's Sylvan on the mic, like, or McDeborah too, that's one of her names too, was like, old way, I thought this was women's performance. So I get my tens, and we're waiting, and nobody walks. And it was like, okay, well, you know, you got the trophy, blah, blah, blah. So I decided I wanted to make a statement. So I went in my pocket, and McDeborah's on the mic like, well, what are you looking for, baby? So McDeborah's looking, I'm looking, trying to figure out what I'm pulling out. I pulled out the string of pearls, and I was whipping them around my finger, and I went back to the middle of the floor, and I began voguing and went all the way down to the floor. The entire place erupted in like, oh my God, la, 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 la. I didn't even know that there was like an icon sitting in the crowd. Jamal Milan was sitting there and watching me, and that was the very first time that I had ever not only met him, but the first time he ever saw me vogue. And I had no idea he was in the crowd. And afterwards, there were a couple of like legends on the panel, and they were talking to me, but I went into a zone. You know, a lot of times when I Vogue, I go into a zone, and they were asking what house I was in at the time, and I couldn't hear them because I was still in this zone. Mm-hmm. So one thing about like Deborah, honey, she'll ask you a question maybe once. If you're lucky, maybe twice. She will not give you a third time. So she kept calling me, and I was in this zone. And like on the last time she called me, she got fed up with me, like, whatever. And I turned around and I was like, huh? And I told her, you know, what house I was in at the time. And she was like, oh, of course. You know what I mean? So it was definitely one of those moments that kind of helped to set me apart from everyone else. But it also kind of put me in my own lane because I wasn't doing super duper feminine costumes and effects and stuff like that. Even to this day, it really just depends on how I feel, because I don't feel to be defined by what others feel that women should represent or should be displayed as. So a lot of times, my effects depend on how I'm feeling. If I feel like putting on a bodysuit, then that's my prerogative. You're not going to tell me as a female, I have to put these things on. And that's another reason why I've been able to kind of carve out my own lane, so to speak, because I just refuse to be put into a box. You know, I think I've walked women's performance in the mainstream maybe once or twice. And that was because they had a Janet Jackson category, honey. So you already know I live down for Janet Jackson. I'm a Janet Jackson fanatic. And since two, okay? Dream Street was my first album, and I have the tape to this day. So I did a whole effect. They did Michael versus Janet one year, and I did an entire effect from her MTV Video Music Awards performance where she was honoring, you know, Michael after he passed away, and had it, the whole effect from head to toe. You know, so I was like, I'll walk women's performance for that. Okay, that's cute. But I ain't doing nobody's, you know, tutu and all of that unless I feel like it. That's just how I roll. So,
I love that. I think going into the idea of making your own lane, would you be able to talk more about why the WBT scene even existed? Why it came from, like, outside of mainstream? Were there people in mainstream that weren't, like, was mainstream at the time not giving that, and like they had to make their own? Or
pretty much
yeah.
Anytime there's a new scene or there's a new lane, it's always to kind of include something or someone who isn't being included, you know what I mean? So that was really kind of the reasoning for it. Just like the Kiki scene, a lot of the younger kids who are extremely talented could not get into mainstream functions. So they created their own scene where they can have fun and it's not as political, and they can just come out and just wild out, you know? So that's really just the, you know, the reasoning behind it. You know, and it went strong for a good while, and then it kind of just stopped. I'm not exactly sure why specifically that it just stopped, but it kind of started to fizzle out. I had crossed back over into the mainstream myself, and began walking mainstream balls. And then once I started walking those balls, then I was, you know, going international and walking internationally. And my aim for me personally was just to, I didn't see too many people who looked like me. You know, I had to kick down some serious doors. And even to this day, it's 2020, and I'm still kicking doors down because you still have folks who believe that, you know, you're supposed to look a certain way, Vogue a certain way, or, you know, whatever that is. You know, like I said, I am not a size 0, and that's fine, honey. I love how I flow and how I get down, and come see me and catch me at the back. You know, and I say that in all humbleness. You know, when we're battling on the floor, then that's one thing. Off the floor, for me, it's all love. And I think that, you know, especially with women in the scene, you know, sometimes we get put against each other, you know, and almost like in a divide and conquer kind of situation. And I think that more of us coming together, you know, kind of makes a statement where, you know, there's room for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
There absolutely is room for everybody. And I believe that the more, you know, talent that comes out and really just comes together in a united front, I think that that will be fortified with the women in the scene.
Going into that, the women in the scene now that the WBT scene has disbanded, and now the people that like yourself that wanted to continue have transitioned to mainstream, the main scene. What are the things that you feel, or do you feel, has there been how has that transition been like, and are there more things people can do, or things that you think that should happen in the scene to accommodate or even just make space for these women in a very EQ, like femme queen kind of like predominant scene, right?
Well, at the end of the day, we have to be a part of the conversation. We have to be a part of the conversation. We have to be a part of, you know, boards that are making decisions. For me, it was a very easy transition. I was already in a mainstream house. So for me, I don't want to say I went backwards because that's not what I mean, but I was in a mainstream house before I discovered the WBT scene. So once I saw that there weren't like a lot of events and stuff like that, I kind of started walking mainstream because I needed to make my name. I was already sitting on judges panels in the WBT scene. You know what I mean? So it was, for me, it kind of, like I said, it set me apart from everybody else. It was fortifying who I was, as I was kind of building my name and making my name. And, you know, the more people saw me, you know, there was people who recognized me and had seen me and had been following me since the WBT scene, excuse me. And I didn't even know that until years down the line. So it's really not even, anybody who wanted to transition could absolutely do that. There were a lot of women who decided, you know what, it was cute. Okay, I'm gonna go over here and have these children and raise these kids and get this job. Just like in mainstream, there's people who either, you know, get status and then to say, okay, you know, two fingers like a pimp, I gotta go and I'm gonna, you know, go live this life real quick. It's really just, it's the same difference. I think that the more that ballroom develops and the more lanes that are made for us as women in the scene, it will continue to grow just as ballroom has and evolve. You know, there's been many times. In fact, the first time that I even realized how far my reach was, I was in Paris preparing for a ball in 2016, and a young woman came up to me and was like, "Oh my God, I can't believe you're here." And I turned around looking for somebody else because I was just convinced that's who she was talking to. And she was like, "No, you, Aisha, Spyder." So she called me by both my names. And I was like, good Lord. You know, and I gagged because when I came into the scene, it was really because this was my freedom. This was my release. This was something that lit me up on the inside. You know, it wasn't about a trophy for me. It wasn't about a coin. No shade to nobody, but it wasn't about that. You know, back in the day, there wasn't a lot of like big coin prizes, you know. It was really about, for me, the passion. You know, dance is something that's my that's one of my languages. You know, that's my release when somebody's pissed me off or I had a bad day or something's going on in my life that's really got me down. Dance just is that for me. So to know that somebody had been watching me, I wasn't prepared for that. And internationally at that, you know, and then from there, it kept going. You know, I was standing on a train platform in New York on 110th Street. And this young guy was like, "Yo, what house are you in?" And I told him, and he goes, "Oh my God, yes, I knew it was you. Your old way is sick. Oh my God." And then turns around and calls out to the group of guys that he's standing with. Now, mind you, these kids were like 14, 15, 16. And I'm gagging like, oh, snap. You know what I mean? I'm in regular clothes. There's nothing about what I had on that said I Vogue. There was nothing. I was just chilling and just, you know, going about my NYC life. And, you know, that was another moment, you know, to go to Amsterdam, and after not being there for 5 years, completely covered up, and the commentator knew who the hell I was just from my movements. You know, it's an amazing feeling. It is something that just fills me up. And there have been times where I've been reduced to tears because that, I didn't set out for that. You know, I didn't set out to be internationally known. That's what came along with it. And I'm grateful because every time I got to a point where I wanted to throw my hands up, because it is a battle. Like I said, there have been times where I've been kicking down doors. And every time, you know, I come across somebody who's trying to put me in a box or tell me I'm not good enough or tell me, you know, whatever, right? All of the naysayer and the haters, right? You know, that gets to people after a while. You get sick of it. You get tired of it. And there's been, every time I got ready to throw my hands and say, you know what, screw this, a young woman or a young man came up to me and told me how much of an inspiration I am to them. You know, it happened earlier this year, and I had been a part of a Don't Rush Challenge, and a young woman from Texas that I had never met in my life saw the No Rush Challenge that I had did, I was a part of, and said, oh my God, she looks like me. I can do this too. And I was scared to post anything because I was thick and, you know, and this, that, and the third, but I saw you and I was like, oh my God. And I had to like seek you out. And I'm surprised that you even responded back to my message. I'm like, what, girl? Bye. Yes. Hello. You know, that's my trophy. That's why I've been doing it, and I do it. You know, and you know how the scene gets where it's very political, and how many trophies you got, and la 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 la. Well, see, if we count the ones that were given to somebody else and they were supposed to be given to me, honey. Okay, right, that part.
That part.
That part. But to have a young woman or a young man come up to me, or, you know, because everybody does the labels thing, they, thou, whatever. And that's no shade, that's no disrespect to anybody. Just for me, it's just, I respect anybody's pronouns. I really don't, you know, I've been called he, or, you know, my bro or whatever. And, you know, she and her are, I guess, would be my pronouns or whatever have you. But just to have anybody approach me and, you know, either ask me for notes or let me know that I'm an inspiration to them, or that they watch me and they've been watching me, that's an amazing feeling. And even, you know, the US versus international, I'll be on a judges panel. Usually when I am internationally, it's funny. I take everybody to the side and give them notes, you know, and they're like, oh my God, like, you know, you coming from the New York scene, and a lot of the kids just want to be seen, so to speak, right? They want to know, okay, well, you know, what can I improve on, or whatever. Or some people just get me all the way up to the point where I'm standing on my feet, and I'll be pointing them out. We in between category, come here. And I pull them to the side, and I'll be like, yo, da, 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 da. Or I'll catch them after the ball, you know, and just to hear how appreciative they are of that. And I don't do it for that. I just do it because I'm like, ooh, you know, what I've come to realize in my journey is that I'm a teacher, you know, and when you become recognized and you become legendary, I feel it's part of that status to be able to pass that knowledge. And, you know, as a griot, you know, which is also a storyteller, I feel compelled to do that. So that has been my honor.
That's so beautiful, Spyder. Wow.
Thank you.
I mean, you inspiring us today too. I mean, it is the reason why I think people gravitate towards you to hear like these stories and your narrative, because it is so uniquely you. And yeah. We have to, so it's 8:40. We have a question, and I think we'll start,
Okay.
we'll just start questions in and see where things go. And We have a question from Kim. Kim, do you actually just want to unmute and ask? Would you like to do that? Because they're on video.
Cool. Yeah, thank you so much for speaking. This has been like incredibly enlightening. And I was just curious, like if you could talk to your past self, like if you could talk to your beginner Vogue self, what kind of advice would you give, or what would you say? And sort of, I guess a lot of that is based on like who you are now, like your future, your like, I guess your present current self with all of your knowledge and experience and all these amazing things that you've lived through. What would you say to them?
My past self, I would have said, or I would say rather, continue to be in the pocket. And what I mean by that is practice more, you know, integrate more and be more in people's face. And why I say that is because I happen to be a street dancer where I wasn't really formally trained. I've taken a couple of classes here and there, but the music tells me how to dance. The music tells me how to move. And whereas people could kind of look at my style and be like, oh, I know she's always in the lab. No. And it's not that I'm not saying that practice isn't important. That's just how mine flows, right? So I would have definitely outsourced, so to speak. I'm always been the type of person who sits underneath the elders. Even now, there are a lot of people who I consider parents and brothers and uncles and so on and so forth in the mainstream scene. And you know, ultimately, I attest my parents to be Willie Ninja and a Sandy Apollonia Ninja for life. But outside of them, Ibaye, outside of them, there's so many other people that I've kind of gravitated towards who have pulled me aside and say, hey, what you're doing is awesome, or da-da-da-da-da, and blah, 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 blah. I would have done that earlier. You know what I mean? And every elder that I speak to who's a part of the scene, it's not only just about the gems that they drop on me, but it's, you know, how people just want to be seen and they just want to be appreciated and they just want to know that they're doing a good job, or, you know, what they could work on or whatever the case may have been. I would have done that a lot earlier. I would have pulled them to aside and been like, let's go get a studio and let's work on these things. So if anything, it would have been that.
That's fab. I love those kind of things when you're going back in time. It's like, you're like, do this.
Yeah, like, you know, it's so funny. I look at some of my earlier like Vogue stuff and I'm like,
yeah. But that's how you learn though, right? I feel like, I mean,
True.
Yeah, and I feel like
some of them horrible. I was like, some of my battles was, I was like, ooh.
Yeah. But you figure it out. You see the reactions, you see what the girls are saying, you get at the top, you're like, okay, cool, that's what's happening.
Absolutely.
I'm very much, yeah, I agree with you. I'm very much, you gotta ask, like, wait, what is it? Something about like open mouths get fed or something, or
closed mouths don't get fed.
Yes, exactly. That part.
I'm done.
So, I have a question because I think we're gonna see if Addie or Minakshi has a question, or please feel free to unmute if you want to. But I have a question while we're waiting. We talked earlier prior to going live about categories in the WBT scene. What are some categories you would like to see in mainstream once this whole situation is done? Or and also, do you think, because I've heard recently, and I think this is how it is, to rule your scene, you need to make the functions are where it's at. Like that's in a lot of ways the functions are like how you create those moments, and people get like it pushes those agendas, people's interests and whatever, right, or what have you. So both, like, what categories do you want to see, but also, do you think there'll ever be a ball? I mean, I'm sure there has already, but after all of this that would be headed by someone like you or from an ex-WBT person?
Well, like I said, there's a lot of people who used to be a part of the WBT scene who are actually in mainstream. There's a lot of people who, again, keep in mind, a lot of, you know, the ones that came together to create the scene were already a part of the mainstream scene, and then kind of went and created that scene. In regards to categories, I don't know if there's really a particular category that I really want to see. I would have to think about that. But what I do want to see is I want to see more women coming out and walking all categories, you know, and slaying. There's a lot of women in the scene who are doing the damn thing, okay? Whether it's runway, women's performance, there are some doing old way, there's some doing new way. You have the face girls just slaying the gods, hutty. There are label girls doing the damn thing. But I want to see more. I want to see more. And I want to see more of, you know, the community as a whole receiving the women. You know, everybody is not, you know, a Vogue Femme girl. And that's no shade, you know. Open up the doors and the spaces for those of us who don't fit in the cookie cutter of ballroom. You understand what I'm saying to you? So what? If a sister come through and she got natural hair and she thick and she wants to do freaking bazaar, then let my sister through. You know what I mean? Embrace all of it. And one thing I do want to address, one thing that I do want to see in ballroom is we are in the middle of so much that is going on today. And part of what's going on today is the Black Lives Matter movement. One thing that really needs to be talked and addressed about is the misappropriation of the culture. And that's no shade to anybody, but you cannot be a part of the culture and not stand up for Black and brown bodies. You absolutely cannot. And I think that that also, and I'm not trying, there's no divide and conquer, there's no whatever. It's just a fact. And I think that coming together as a community, okay, you know, we have trans women of color just murdered. We have trans men of color that don't even get talked about who are being murdered. This is very important. You know, there's a lot of people who are a part of the scene who are here for the glitz and the glamour, honey, but they're not here for the cups and the flashlights and you understand what I'm saying to you? That's very important. You know, when this whole pandemic hit, you know, everybody was gagging because the balls stopped. There was a lot of balls that were planned. I know myself, I had maybe 5 international trips I had planned coming up, you know, to go to different countries and to participate. And that's all well and good. But when you're hearing names in the news every day, all day, that hit a lot of us in a way that I can't even begin to imagine, you know, or begin to explain to everyone. You know, that's very important. When ballroom took a pause because of the pandemic, there are a lot of people who their escape was balls. Their escape was ballroom. You know, some of the social constructs that were present back when, you know, like Paris is Burning and all, you know, that stuff still exists. You know, there are people who really cannot go home. There are people who are not accepted by their families. There are people who are out in these streets struggling with meth. You understand what I'm saying to you? So if anything, I would want to see that really becoming, you know, topics of conversation because it's real. Right now, we're preparing to vote. Who, you know, especially in the States, right? So that is important. They just did an initiative, last Friday, you know, within ballroom to get people to vote. That's important. You know, ballroom is such an amazing platform. But I also think that those who are not counted need to be counted. Those who are not recognized need to be recognized. Those who are not uplifted need to be uplifted. And the thing is if you can't get out of your own way and see that this is also a part of the culture, then you're part of the problem, period, dot.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah, I think it's so interesting. People come into Ballroom, or I find people come to Vogue Jam and are wanting this inclusivity that Ballroom is portrayed, but there's still a lot of work needed even within Ballroom itself to navigate like what it really means to be inclusive.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And yeah, I agree. There's been so many great balls. There was that one. There's the one about America. This is America ball. Is it this America? Have in San Francisco. What's their name? I'm forgetting their name. There's a few balls that have been on of what's happening in the world now. And I think, yeah,
right.
Ballroom had that opportunity. I mean, even if you think of the GmbH balls, like the latex balls, how they are originally for like educating people about AIDS and HIV,
right.
what that has created, what latex is now, you know, and all from that one need to educate people about being safe.
And even knowing the history, or if you don't know the history, finding it out, you know, just as the latex ball, which was not only GHMC, was also the House of Latex. Mm-hmm, the latex ball, everybody used to dress in white. Everyone. Mm-hmm. You see what I'm saying? You know, knowing why. Just little things, asking questions, just being present. That's why I've always been a student of the elders. Mm-hmm. You know, so that when I get into these spaces, I can, you know, talk not only from my experience, but things that I've learned from my elders. You know, it's very, very important. And I think that's another thing that I would like to see is the elders of the community being taken care of. You know, when you have these legends and these icons, you know, and these Hall of Famers who get, you know, up in age, and they're dealing with health issues, they're dealing with, you know, finances and housing. You don't hear about that. You know, you see them walked out on the stage, but are you checking on them? Mm-hmm, you know, that's real. That's real. You know, in the LGBTQ plus community, plus community, you know, that's real. Nobody thinks about the elders. Everybody's here for the ball, right? Mm-hmm. Then when the ball is over, everybody goes home. But these are things that are important. So if anything, if I wanted to see more of anything, would be those, you know, this umbrella of things that I mentioned, you know, because I think that sometimes we get caught in the fantasy and the world of ballroom, but there's some real things that need to be covered and tackled as a community.
Wow. Yeah, I just want to say thank you so much, Spyder, for spending your evening with us now.
It's like 4 o'clock in the morning, okay, in these parts.
Yes. I really appreciate this opportunity to get to know you more, and also share your story with Vogue Jam. Yeah, are there any last words you want to say to our little scene here?
I definitely want to thank you guys for reaching out to me to bring me on as a speaker. It's always, you know, an amazing opportunity for me to do that. Thank you, Addie. And I think that this needs to continue. Absolutely. To be able to have this platform is an honor, and one that I don't take lightly. Mm-hmm. And I think that the scene in Vancouver is well on its way to developing. I don't care how many people there is, the fact that there are, you know, people out there who are embracing the culture, embracing ballroom, and working on their own. You know, thank you, Kim. And thank you for your question. Who are embracing the culture and the lifestyle and just bringing ballroom to another area of the world, you know, I think is an amazing thing. Definitely keep up the good work and, you know, positive vibes, and literally, you know, reach out to the elders in the scene. Mm-hmm. You know, if you see something, say something. And I don't mean to be very cliche of New York, right? But, you know, like, we can only go up from here if we do it together.
Totally. Well, thank you so much, Spyder. Thank you, everyone else. We're gonna stop the recording now.
And Janet Jackson for life. Janet Jackson for life.
Janet Jackson for life.